In this video, I'd like to talk about stimulants and in particular, how stimulants can influence our sense of arousal, and in particular, our energy level and our psychological energy. And stimulants tend to be something that increase or enhance a function. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's positive, but it can be, and it certainly tends to influence more of the neurotransmitters and the psychological processes that are oriented towards positivity and aspects of positivity associated with reward, pleasure, interest, attention, awareness, focal awareness, acuity, and also perspective and imagination and reasoning. So stimulants tend to be generally pretty positive, and what they tend to do is they tend to enhance uh, neurotransmitters that focus on aspects of alertness, learning, memory, and motivation, such as norepinephrine, serotonin, that mostly regulates perceptions and mood, as well as other basic motivational drives, but also higher order psychological motivations that are associated with psychological well being and meaning, as well as interest, intent, and purposes. And it tends to be more of a modulator of our perceptions associated with our emotions and our feelings. And there's also tends to be increases in acetylcholine, which is associated mostly with the neurotransmission and learning. That tends to be more associated with various stimulants, even like coffee or cigarettes and tobacco in particular, um, that tend to increase acetylcholine through often these nicotine receptors, and or even caffeine tends to produce both adenosine and acetylcholine that can help facilitate both the wakefulness and our attention through the adenosine, and our how alert, not necessarily alert we are, but how wakeful we are and present in the moment. But in relation to learning, acetylcholine tends to uh, orient our attention towards distinct or novel stimulation. So the combination of those two can really tend to optimize functions when they're operating in balance and in an appropriate um, manner that allows us to retain information and more coherently and cogently process uh, surrounding information and knowledge and experiences that are associated with novel or distinct characteristics, in which we come to encode and embed within various psychological processes involving the storage and manipulation of meaning that's occurring throughout the internal workings of the self involving these incorporeal elements that have a psychological and perceptual basis, and which are connected to a psychophysiological system in which our nervous system is responding neuroplastically to, and allows us to expand and also ready our repertoires uh, through the expansion of knowledge and information, but most importantly, meaning and meaningful processes associated with a particular set of specified stimulus in which we might be learning or deepening our knowledge of. And what stimulants tend to do is they tend to increase a wide variety of processes that are interrelated in terms of often performance, learning, and memory associated with various neurotransmitters, acetylcholine, serotonin, norepinephrine, but also epinephrine, um, which again is also associated more with this arousal and this alertness, and to some degree uh, uh, plays a role in wakefulness, but it has also a more of a physiological basis. So increasing things like our heart rate, our reading the body in various ways. So there's a psychophysiological component that's deep there, and we can a moderate use of stimulants or like drinking coffee on day to day. You can learn through these experiences of ingesting substances that are within reason, that are being consumed responsibly. Um, you can notice these subtle effects in stimulation and arousal and how they influence us, and also how consciousness and even the mind we can step back from it and develop these uh, detachments from the substance and the material that we're ingesting, consuming, and really come to appreciate its effect and influence on us as individuals, but also use that as a source of understanding how even other perceptions and behaviors can be used to modulate the self and what we experience within the mind in relation to the self, not just the self, but there might be aspects, say of our direct experience. So there typically is aspects of our direct experience that sort of like these floating thoughts, or have this natural environment to us that is really balanced to our self, and more particularly the surroundings that we come to distinguish the self from. And there's like these floating subject matters, right, and object relations, and they're not all us, right? Who we are as individuals. We form these relations to them, and they can have meaning or not. They can be less meaningless or more meaningful, right, to us as individuals. And it has to do with these relationships that we form, these subject object relations, but also subjective objective relationships that pertain more to the psychological domain, in which we process both these implicit or explicit meanings. And what that means is that there tends to be these obvious and apparent meanings, the explicit meanings that we can access, and we can come to understand direct knowledge or knowns. We have these sensory representations that appear to us and in which we interpret symbolically. But there's also these implicit elements that could be subconscious or unconscious that aren't as obvious, and which can sometimes be processed um, without our awareness of them. So there's no awareness of them, or we can have subtle awareness of them. So we don't have we have partial knowledge, or we think we might know. And there might be some truth to that, but it's probably not entirely accurate. And so we could have various degrees